You think tennis is just about winners and backhands? Think again, because what Eala just pulled off in 2025 wasn't just a season, it was a statement, a declaration of war against every doubter, every biased official, and every rival who thought a 20-year-old from the Philippines had no business competing with the world's elite. And when Rafael Nadal finally broke his silence about it, the tennis world stopped spinning. Stick around, because we're about to break down how a kid who started swinging rackets in a country that barely acknowledges tennis just rewrote the entire playbook, and why Nadal's words hit harder than any forehand he ever launched at Roland Garros. Quick favor, if you are loving this content, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers watch without subscribing. It costs nothing, but means everything to us. Already subscribed? Awesome! Thanks so much. Now, back to the main event. Picture this: Bangkok 2025, Southeast Asian Games. The crowd is electric, the humidity is suffocating, and Eala is standing on the baseline, racket in hand, staring down an opponent who has every advantage except one: the hunger. Not the kind of hunger you feel after skipping breakfast. No, this is the kind that gnaws at you when you have spent your entire life being told you do not belong. When coaches look past you, when officials make calls that would make a blind referee blush, when your own country does not even have a tennis culture to speak of, let alone celebrate your victories. Eala stepped onto that court carrying the weight of an entire nation that didn't even know they should be watching. And then she did what she does best. She obliterated the competition and claimed gold. But here's the kicker. That gold medal wasn't just a trophy. It was payback. Sweet, brutal, undeniable payback. Because the road to Bangkok was paved with hostility. We're talking about matches where line calls seemed to have their own agenda, where gamesmanship was not just tolerated, it was practically encouraged, where psychological warfare was the appetizer and the main course. Alex faced opponents who tried to rattle her with delays, questionable medical timeouts, and stare-downs that could freeze lava. She faced umpires whose eyesight apparently went on vacation during crucial points, and she faced a system that seemed designed to remind her that she was an outsider. So what did she do? She smiled, reset, and turned every single setback into fuel. Imagine being 20 years old, playing in a tournament where the deck is stacked against you, and deciding that the best response is not to complain, not to cry foul, but simply to win so decisively that nobody can argue. That is exactly what Alex did. She didn't just beat her rivals, she dismantled them. Point by point, game by game, until the only sound left in the stadium was applause and the collective realization that something historic had just happened. And then came the United States Open. Yeah, you heard that right. The United States Open, one of the 4 Grand Slam tournaments, the kind of stage where legends are made and dreams either take flight or crash spectacularly. Eala, the girl from Manila who learned tennis at Rafael Nadal's academy in Spain, walked onto those courts and did something no Filipino had ever done before. She won. Not a lucky first-round fluke, not a feel-good story that ends in the second round. She fought her way through matches that had commentators scrambling for superlatives. She displayed shot-making that had veteran analysts rewinding footage to make sure they saw it correctly. She showed composure under pressure that would make seasoned pros jealous. But let us rewind for a second, because none of this happens without understanding where Alex came from. At 13 years old, she left the Philippines, left her family, left everything familiar, and moved to Spain to train at Rafa Nadal's academy. 13! Most kids at 13 are worried about homework and what's for dinner. Alex was worrying about whether her forehand had enough topspin and whether her footwork could keep up with the best junior players in Europe. The academy was not just a training ground, it was a crucible, a place where mental toughness was forged alongside physical skill, where the philosophy was not just about hitting harder, but about thinking smarter, where the legend himself, Rafael Nadal, had built a system designed to produce champions who could handle adversity like it was just another drill. And Alex absorbed every bit of it. She learned to embrace the grind, to see every loss as a lesson, to treat every match like a battle where the scoreboard was secondary to the fight itself, because that's the Nadal way. It's not about flashy Instagram highlights or viral trick shots. It's about relentless, unforgiving, unapologetic competitiveness. It's about looking your opponent in the eye and making them understand that you will not quit. Not when you're tired, not when you're injured, not when the crowd is against you, not ever. Fast forward to 2025, and all those years of training, all those lonely nights in Spain, all those matches where she was the underdog, they all paid off. Alex didn't just become the first Filipino in the WTA Top 50, she became a symbol, a living, breathing testament to what happens when raw talent meets unbreakable will. When a girl from a country that doesn't have tennis courts on every corner decides that geography doesn't determine destiny. But here's where it gets really interesting. Throughout this entire journey, there was one person watching, one person who understood better than anyone what Alex was going through. Rafael Nadal, the man who turned clay courts into his personal kingdom, the man who won 22 Grand Slam titles not because he was the biggest or the fastest, but because he refused to accept defeat. The man who retired from professional tennis but never stopped caring about the next generation. And for months, Nadal stayed silent. He watched Alex's victories. He saw her fight through hostile environments. He witnessed her gold medal run in Bangkok and her historic United States Open performance. And he said nothing publicly. Until now. When Nadal finally broke his silence, it wasn't with some generic congratulations post. It wasn't with a throwaway comment in a press conference. It was with words that carried the weight of someone who had been there, who had felt the same pressure, who had faced the same doubts. Nadal spoke about Alex with the kind of reverence usually reserved for established champions. He talked about her mental fortitude, not as some abstract concept, but as a tangible, observable quality that he recognized because he had lived it himself. He mentioned watching her matches and seeing the same refusal to yield that defined his own career. He talked about the academy, about how training someone is not just about technique, it is about instilling a mindset. And with Alex, that mindset had taken root in a way that even he found remarkable. But Nadal did not just praise her past accomplishments. He made it clear that 2025 was not the peak, it was the foundation. He spoke about 2026 with the kind of intensity that made tennis fans sit up and take notice. Because when Rafael Nadal says someone is ready for greater challenges, when he says that what we have seen so far is just the beginning, you listen. This is not hype. This is not empty cheerleading. This is a man who knows excellence intimately, saying that Alex Eala is just getting started. Think about that for a second. The same guy who battled Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic in some of the greatest matches ever played. The same guy who won the French Open 14 times. The same guy who defined what it means to be a warrior on the tennis court. That guy, present tense, future-focused. Because Nadal does not deal in nostalgia when it comes to competition. He deals in reality. And the reality is this. Alex Eala is not just a feel-good story. She is not just a trailblazer for Filipino tennis, though she is absolutely that. She is not just a young player with potential, though she has that in spades. Alex Eala is a threat, a legitimate, undeniable threat to anyone who steps on the court across from her. Because she has something that cannot be taught in a weekend clinic. She has the kind of mental armor that only comes from surviving years of being underestimated, overlooked, and outright disrespected. You want to know what makes Alex dangerous? It is not her serve, though it is improving. It is not her ground strokes, though they are formidable. It is the fact that when the pressure ratchets up, when the crowd turns hostile, when the call spirit instead. That United States Open run, that was her announcing to the world that she belongs on the biggest stages. And Nadal's endorsement, quote, "You live up to it." But let's be real for a second. The tennis world is brutal.
It is not just about talent, it is about surviving the tour, the travel, the injuries, the politics, the ranking system that can feel arbitrary, the pressure from sponsors, from fans, from yourself. Players burn out, players fade, players who looked unstoppable at 20 become cautionary tales by 25. So why should we believe Alex is different? Because she already proved it. She proved it every time an official made a questionable call and she reset without complaint. She proved it every time an opponent tried to rattle her and she responded with a winner down the line. She proved it every time she walked onto a court as the underdog and walked off as the victor. And most importantly, she proved it by choosing the hardest path possible. She could have stayed in the Philippines, dominated local tournaments, been a big fish in a small pond. Instead, she went to Spain as a teenager, got humbled, got better, and kept fighting. So when we talk about 2026, we are not talking about hope. We are talking about expectation, because Alex Eala is not done, not even close. She has tasted victory at the highest levels. She has felt what it is like to shut down doubters. She has experienced the validation of having one of the greatest players ever affirm her path. And now she's hungry for more. Nadal knows this. He's been there. He's been the young player with something to prove, the outsider fighting for respect, the competitor who turned adversity into motivation. And he sees all of that in Alex. That's why his words matter. That's why his silence breaking was not just news, it was a signal that the tennis world better start paying attention, because the girl from Manila, trained by legends, is not just participating, she is conquering. And here's the beautiful irony. Tennis barely exists in the Philippines. It is not basketball, it is not boxing, it is not even on the radar for most Filipinos. Yet Alex Eala is forcing the conversation. She is making people in her home country look up from their daily lives and realize that one of their own is doing something extraordinary. She is creating a legacy in real time, not for validation, not for approval, but because that's what champions do. They create paths where none existed. So, as we head into 2026, the question is not whether Alex Eala can handle the pressure. She already answered that. The question is not whether she belongs among the elite. Bangkok and the United States Open settled that debate. The real question is this: how far can she go? How many more rivals will she dismantle? How many more records will she break? How many more times will Rafael Nadal break his silence to remind us that we are watching something special? Because if 2025 taught us anything, it is that Alex Eala is not just playing tennis, she is waging war. A war against mediocrity, against bias, against every system that said she didn't fit. And with Nadal in her corner, with gold medals and Grand Slam victories already on her resume, with a mindset forged in the fires of the most demanding academy in the world, she is not just winning battles, she is winning the war. And 2026? That's when things get really interesting. Stay tuned, folks, because this story is just getting started.